The arena's newest slave. Commander Maya Rise of the Earth Exploratory Fleet had imagined first contact going differently. She'd practiced diplomatic greetings in front of her mirror. She'd memorized the contact protocols. She'd even brought gifts. Digital archives of human music, art, and literature. Tokens of peace from one intelligent species to another. The Vrexians had brought neural restraints and combat chains. Now, 3 weeks after her capture, Maya stood in a holding cell beneath what the aliens called the Grand Arena, her wrists and ankles bound by gleaming silver-blue chains that hummed with strange energy. The chains allowed her just enough mobility to walk, and apparently to fight. "You should be honored," chirped the small avian-like creature grooming her for presentation. Its name was Pick, a member of the shrill species that had been conquered by the Vrexians centuries ago. "Most new acquisitions are sent straight to the labor camps. You've been deemed entertaining enough for the arena." "Lucky me," Maya muttered, testing the weight of her chains. They were surprisingly light for their apparent strength. Some alien alloy she didn't recognize. "What exactly am I supposed to do in this arena?" Pick's feathers ruffled in what Maya had learned was amusement. "Why, survive, of course. Though most soft bodies like yourself rarely last beyond their first match." The door to her cell slid open with a metallic hiss. 4 Vrexian guards entered, each standing over 7 feet tall, with iridescent scaled skin, and 4 arms ending in clawed hands. Their elongated heads housed rows of serrated teeth that gleamed when they spoke. "The new meat is ready?" asked the lead guard, not bothering to address Maya directly. "Prepared and primed, sir," Pick answered with practiced enthusiasm. "Though I must note that humans have no natural weapons or defensive capabilities. Perhaps a simple blade would." "Denied," the guard cut in. "Supreme Commander Vox has specifically ordered the human to fight as is. The chains are handicap enough." Maya was marched through winding corridors that sloped gradually upward. The distant roar of what could only be a crowd grew louder with each step. Her tactical mind worked furiously, cataloging details, assessing threats, plotting escape routes. 10 years of military training hadn't prepared her for alien abduction, but the fundamentals of survival remained the same. Observe, adapt, overcome. The passage opened onto a vast circular arena filled with rust-colored sand. Towering above were rings of spectator seating that spiraled up into darkness, filled with thousands of aliens from dozens of species. Massive holographic displays hung suspended in the air, currently showing close-ups of Maya's face. "Behold," boomed a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The Vrexian Empire presents its newest acquisition, a human female from the recently discovered planet Earth." The crowd's reaction was a cacophony of roars, clicks, whistles, and sounds Maya's ears couldn't properly process. "Primitive, soft, and lacking any natural offensive adaptations," continued the announcer with clear disdain. "This specimen represents the evolutionary dead end that is humanity. Handicapped with mobility restraints for sporting purposes, she faces today's introductory challenger, a juvenile Krull beast." A gate on the opposite side of the arena ground open. From the shadows emerged a creature that resembled a cross between a rhinoceros and a praying mantis, its chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the arena lights. It stood roughly 8 feet tall, with 6 limbs tipped with scythe-like appendages and a head dominated by compound eyes and slashing mandibles. "Remember," the guard beside her said with a sound like grinding stones, the Vrexian equivalent of laughter, "it's only a juvenile. If it were mature, you wouldn't have even this small chance to entertain us." With that, Maya was shoved forward into the arena. The chains between her ankles limited her stride to small, shuffling steps. The crowd's noise intensified as the Krull beast spotted her and began pawing at the sand. "Begin," the announcer bellowed. The Krull charged with startling speed, covering half the arena in seconds. Maya's military training kicked in immediately. Not the formal combat techniques taught in academies, but the hard-won instincts developed in real engagements. She waited until the last possible moment before throwing herself sideways. The creature's momentum carried it past her, its scythe barely missing her face. As it skidded to turn around, Maya assessed her options. The chains severely limited her mobility, but they were her only potential weapon. She gathered the slack between her wrists, forming a makeshift garrote. When the Krell charged again, Maya dropped to the ground, letting the beast pass over her. As it did, she thrust her bound hands upward, catching one of its legs with her chain. The creature's forward momentum did the rest. The leg snapped with a crack that echoed across the arena. The Krell screamed, a high-pitched chittering that sent shivers down Maya's spine. It stumbled, now off balance with only 5 functional limbs. The crowd's noise changed in tenor. Maya sensed surprise rippling through the audience. Pressing her advantage, Maya scrambled to her feet and shuffled toward the injured beast. It struck out wildly with its remaining front scythes, but the injury had compromised its coordination. Maya ducked beneath a swing and, using the chain between her wrists, caught another limb, twisting it until she heard another satisfying crack. Now the Krell was thrashing in pain and confusion. Maya circled to its blind spot and, with a precisely timed leap that pushed her chains to their limit, landed on the creature's back. Before it could dislodge her, she looped her chains around what she hoped was the equivalent of its throat and pulled with all her strength. For 30 agonizing seconds, she clung to the bucking beast as it tried to throw her off. Then, gradually, its struggles weakened. When it finally collapsed to the sand, Maya rolled clear, chest heaving, chains clanking as she rose to her feet. Silence filled the arena. Then, a single Vrexian in the highest tier of seats stood and made a strange gesture. 3 of its 4 arms extended outward with claws spread. Others followed suit until the entire arena was a forest of outstretched arms. Unprecedented, the announcer's voice had lost its mocking edge. The human has defeated the Krell using only her restraints, a technical victory through environmental adaptation. Maya looked directly at the nearest camera drone hovering above her. "If you wanted a proper fight," she said clearly, knowing the arena's audio systems would pick up her words, "you should have given me a proper weapon." The silence that followed was profound. In his private viewing box, Supreme Commander Vox of the Vrexian Imperial Fleet leaned forward, all 4 eyes fixed on the small human female standing defiantly amid the sand. "Intriguing," he hissed to his adjutant. "Very intriguing indeed." Maya's second match came 3 days later, against a creature called a Orcs, a predator with a flexible skeletal structure that allowed it to compress its body to squeeze through incredibly narrow spaces, then expand to its full size in an instant. Once again, the arena masters expected her quick defeat. Once again, Maya disappointed them. She used the chains differently this time, creating trip hazards in the sand that the rushing Orcs failed to notice until it was sprawling, its fluid movements disrupted at a critical moment. Maya finished it by tangling its compressible body in her chains during mid-transformation, causing it to crush its own internal organs. By her 5th victory, Maya had earned a name among the arena crowds. Chain Dancer. The originally mocking handicap had become her signature, and audiences no longer came to witness her demise, but to see what new and inventive ways she would use her limitations as strengths. Her quarters improved from a bare cell to modest accommodations. Her food changed from nutrient paste to actual prepared meals. And most importantly, she began receiving visits from other fighters, members of various subjugated species who had survived in the arena system long enough to earn certain privileges. "You fight well for a soft body," rumbled Drac, a massive reptilian creature with stone-like plates covering his body. He was the current champion of the mid-tier fights, respected for his 37 consecutive victories. "But you haven't faced a true apex predator yet." "I'm looking forward to it," Maya replied, methodically going through stretching exercises that helped her maintain flexibility despite her chains. Over weeks of constant wear, she had developed calluses where the metal touched her skin. The chains no longer felt like restraints. They were extensions of herself. "Are you?" Drax's laugh was like rocks sliding down a mountainside. Then you are either very brave or very foolish. The upper tiers are dominated by the Phyrexians' most prized acquisitions, hunters and killers from across the galaxy. Tell me about them, Maya said, sitting cross-legged on the floor. Especially about Terex. Drax's eyes narrowed. Terex was the grand champion, a chimeric nightmare spliced together from the genetic material of a dozen apex predators. Undefeated for 23 cycles, it was the Phyrexian Emperor's pride and joy. You cannot seriously be planning to challenge Terex, Drax said incredulously. Maya smiled, fingers absently tracing the links of her chains. Not yet, but someday. Why? Even if you somehow defeated Terex, the Phyrexians would never grant you freedom. The most you can hope for is better quarters and richer food. I'm not fighting for better accommodations, Drax. Maya leaned forward. I'm fighting for something much bigger. But I need allies. I need information. And most importantly, I need to understand how this entire system works. Drax was silent for a long moment, studying her with ancient eyes. There are whispers, he finally said, among the long-term captives, whispers of coordination, of resistance. I'm listening, Maya said. And so began her education in the true politics of the arena. She learned about the various species that had been conquered and enslaved by the Phyrexian Empire over centuries. She discovered the complex betting systems that funded much of the imperial treasury. She mapped the hierarchies and rivalries among the arena masters. Most importantly, she learned about the annual Grand Tournament, where champions from all of the Empire's arenas came together to fight before the Emperor himself, with the winner granted a single request that tradition obligated the Emperor to fulfill. By her 10th victory, fighting against increasingly dangerous opponents, Maya had a plan forming. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It wasn't even about escape. It was about bringing down the entire system. The night before her most challenging match yet, against a creature that could control electrical currents and generate stunning fields, Maya sat in her quarters with her small circle of confidence. Drax, Pick, the avian attendant who had secretly been helping fighters for years. Zell, a gelatinous entity with remarkable telepathic abilities. And Crix, a tiny but brilliant mechanic from a world of miniature engineers. Tomorrow's fight is designed to kill you, Drax warned. The Phyrexians have noticed your rising popularity. They fear what could happen if you continue to advance. I'm counting on it, Maya said, and explained the next phase of her plan. One that would either get her killed or catapult her toward the confrontation she'd been working toward since her first day in chains. As her allies left to fulfill their parts of the preparation, Maya stood alone in her quarters, chains glinting in the dim light. She thought of Earth, of the fleet that must be searching for her, of the diplomatic mission that had turned into abduction. You wanted a savage, she whispered to the absent Phyrexians, so that's exactly what I'll give you. Revolution in steel and blood. The crowds had never seen anything like it. In theory, the match was suicide. Commander Maya Rise, the human chain dancer, versus Volt, a 9-foot-tall predator from a high-gravity world whose body constantly generated electrical fields powerful enough to stun creatures 3 times Maya's size. The Phyrexian bookmakers had set odds at 200 to 1 against her. Nobody had told them about the insulation. Impossible, the announcer screeched as Maya's chains, now wrapped in thin strips of scavenged material Crix had smuggled to her, failed to conduct Volt's electrical attack. The chain dancer appears to have. The rest of the sentence was lost as Maya launched herself forward, using the chains between her ankles as a pivot point to swing beneath Volt's defensive perimeter. The creature's electricity, unable to travel through her insulated chains, crackled harmlessly around her as she wrapped the links around its ankles and pulled. Watching from his private box, Supreme Commander Vox hissed in displeasure. She had help, he said to his adjutant. No primitive could have engineered that countermeasure. Search the lower quarters and find her accomplices. But it was too late. As Volt crashed to the arena floor, Maya executed the maneuver she'd practiced for weeks, using her momentum and the creature's own weight to snap its neck with a precisely applied chain-assisted leverage pull. The killing was quick, clean, almost merciful by arena standards. The crowd erupted, not in anger at being cheated of a bloody spectacle, but in wild celebration. The chain dancer had defied impossible odds once again, and the viewing masses loved her for it. "We have a problem," Vox said, rising from his seat. "A significant problem." 3 days later, Maya stood in a chamber she'd never seen before, the Hall of Champions, where fighters who had proven themselves exceptional were granted audience with Arena Master Krell, the Phyrexian in charge of all combat entertainment throughout the Empire. "Chain Dancer," the massive alien addressed her, his voice a rumbling bass that vibrated through her chest. "You have accomplished what no human should be capable of. 15 victories, each more impressive than the last." Maya remained silent, chains glinting under the hall's crystalline lights. She'd learned that among Phyrexians, speaking before being directly questioned was considered an insult. "Our analysts are conflicted," Krell continued, pacing around her in a circle. Each of his 4 arms ended in ceremonial daggers rather than the usual claws, a sign of his rank. "Some believe you have been underestimated due to prejudice against soft-bodied species. Others suspect technological intervention or outside assistance." He stopped directly in front of her, lowering his elongated head to peer into her eyes. "What do you believe, human?" "I believe," Maya said carefully, "that chains make poor restraints when the prisoner has nothing to lose." Krell made a sound that might have been amusement. Philosophical. Interesting. He straightened to his full height. "You have earned the right to challenge for promotion to the upper tier of combatants. Should you succeed, you would face only the Empire's most elite fighters. And if I refuse?" "There is no refusal." Krell's voice hardened. "You fight, or you die. That is the way of the arena." Maya nodded, having expected nothing less. "Who would I face?" "The gatekeeper of the upper tier, Skarax the Render." Maya had heard whispers of Skarax, a genetically modified warrior species with bony protrusions capable of slicing through metal and a secondary cardiovascular system that allowed it to fight at full capacity even after sustaining injuries that would kill most creatures. "When?" she asked. "1 cycle," Krell replied. "Prepare yourself, Chain Dancer. This will not be like your previous matches." As Maya was escorted back to her quarters, now located in the mid-tier fighters section of the complex, she mentally adjusted her timeline. Everything was proceeding faster than she'd anticipated. The rebellion would need to accelerate accordingly. Drac was waiting in her quarters, his stone-like features set in what Maya had learned to recognize as concern. "They've taken Crix," he rumbled as soon as the guards departed. "Dragged him to the interrogation chambers." Maya's stomach clenched, but she kept her expression neutral. "He knows the plan. He won't break easily. No one holds out forever against Phyrexian interrogators," Drac said grimly. "We need to move now, before they uncover everything." Maya shook her head. "Not yet. We need the grand tournament. Without it, we're just disorganized prisoners staging a futile rebellion. With it, we have a shot at something lasting." "If Skarax doesn't kill you first," Drac pointed out. "He's not like your previous opponents. He's a killer bred specifically for the arena." "Then I'll just have to be something he wasn't bred to expect." Maya smiled, but there was no humor in it. She sat on her sleeping platform and began her pre-fight ritual of checking each link in her chains for integrity. "Get word to Zell. Tell her to accelerate the psychic network. Every fighter who's with us needs to be ready to move when the signal comes." Drac hesitated. "And Crix?" Maya looked up, her eyes hard. "We'll get him back, or we'll make them pay for taking him. Either way, the Phyrexians will regret starting this." The match against Skarax was scheduled as the main event of the evening, a prime slot that guaranteed maximum viewership across the Empire. Maya knew that Supreme Commander Vox and possibly even representatives of the Emperor himself would be watching. Perfect. She entered the arena to a deafening roar from the crowd. Her chains had been freshly polished for the occasion, gleaming like liquid silver in the harsh lights. Across the sand, emerging from the opposite entrance, came Skarax. The creature was everything the Whispers had promised and worse. 9 feet of armor-plated muscle, with bony blades protruding from its forearms, knees, and spine. Its face was a nightmare of evolutionary specialization for killing. Rows of serrated teeth, nostrils that flared to catch the scent of fear, and 6 eyes arranged to provide perfect 360-degree vision. Behold, the announcer's voice boomed. The gatekeeper of the upper tier, Skarax the Render, faces the unprecedented phenomenon that is the human chain dancer. Will her remarkable streak continue, or will she finally meet her end as all lesser beings must? Maya tuned out the rest of the introduction, focusing instead on Skarax's movements as they circled each other. Unlike her previous opponents, Skarax showed no signs of underestimating her. It studied her with cold calculation, apparently immune to the crowd's excitement. When it attacked, there was no warning, no tensing of muscles, no preparatory stance. One moment Skarax was circling, the next it was airborne in a lethal pounce that would have ended the fight instantly had Maya not already been rolling away. The creature's bony blades sliced through the sand where she had stood, sending up a spray of particles. Its recovery was instantaneous, already turning to track her movement before its feet had fully settled. Maya had faced speed before, but nothing like this. She barely evaded the next 3 strikes, each one coming closer than the last to finding her flesh. The chains between her ankles, which she had learned to work with so effectively, now seemed to be dragging her down. A blade caught her shoulder, opening a shallow but painful gash. The crowd roared at the sight of first blood. Maya retreated, trying to create distance, but Skarax pressed forward relentlessly, its 6 eyes never blinking, never losing focus. The chain dancer appears to be outmatched at last. The announcer crowed. The natural order reasserts itself. Maya feigned a stumble, a dangerous gambit against such a quick opponent, but one she hoped would create an opening. Skarax took the bait, lunging forward for what it clearly thought would be the killing blow. At the last possible instant, Maya dropped flat and thrust her bound wrists upward, catching one of Skarax's bony protrusions in her chains. Using the creature's own momentum, she twisted violently. The blade snapped with a crack that echoed through the arena. Skarax bellowed in pain, the first sound Maya had heard it make. Black ichor sprayed from the broken protrusion, spattering across the sand. The crowd fell silent in shock. Maya rolled to her feet, now holding the broken blade in her chained hands. For the first time in arena history, the chain dancer had a weapon beyond her restraints. Skarax charged again, but now the dynamics had shifted. Maya met the creature's onslaught with its own severed blade, parrying strikes that would have otherwise torn her apart. Her chains limited her mobility, but they also allowed her to execute fighting techniques no Phyrexian had ever witnessed, movements that incorporated the chain's momentum into her attacks. For 10 brutal minutes, they fought across the arena, leaving trails of blood, red and black intermingling in the sand. Maya sustained more injuries, but each exchange taught her more about her opponent's fighting style. Skarax, despite its genetic enhancements, fought with patterns, deadly effective patterns, but patterns nonetheless. And patterns could be predicted. When Maya saw her opportunity, she took it without hesitation. Skarax overextended on a thrust, expecting her to retreat as she had done consistently. Instead, she stepped into the attack, accepting a slice across her ribs to position her chains directly in the path of the creature's neck. With a move that combined the chain's leverage with the broken blade in her hands, Maya severed the primary arteries in Skarax's throat. Black ichor erupted in a pressurized spray, coating them both. Skarax staggered, its secondary cardiovascular system struggling to compensate for the massive damage. Maya gave it no time to recover. She struck again and again, targeting the joints and vulnerable spots she'd identified during their battle. When Skarax finally collapsed to the arena floor, Maya stood over it, chest heaving, blood dripping from multiple wounds. She raised her chained hands, still gripping the creature's own bony blade, and looked directly at the Imperial box where Supreme Commander Vox sat in stunned silence. "I claim my right of ascension," she called, her voice carrying across the now silent arena. "And I claim this weapon as my trophy." Tradition demanded that Vox acknowledge her victory and grant her request. With visible reluctance, he stood and extended 3 arms in the gesture of acceptance. The crowd erupted in the loudest cheer yet. The chain dancer had become a true arena legend. The weeks that followed were a careful balance of public spectacle and secret preparation. Maya fought in the upper tiers, facing genetically engineered monstrosities and veteran killers from across the galaxy. She won each match, though never easily, adding new scars to her collection and new tricks to her fighting style. The broken blade from Skarax became her signature weapon, used in conjunction with her chains to create a hybrid fighting technique no one in the Empire had seen before. Audiences across thousands of worlds tuned in to watch her matches, and betting pools around her performances grew to unprecedented sizes. Meanwhile, beneath the surface of the arena complex, the rebellion took shape. Zell's psychic network connected fighters across different tiers, passing messages without Brexian knowledge. Drac organized the physically strongest captives into strike teams. Pick, with his access to administrative areas, mapped escape routes and security protocols. And deep in the interrogation chambers, Crix endured, whether through remarkable resilience or because the Vrexians simply couldn't conceive of a multi-species rebellion in their perfectly controlled arena. He revealed nothing of their plans. 50 days after her first match, Maya achieved what no one had thought possible: qualification for the grand tournament before the Emperor himself. Only 20 fighters from across the Empire would compete, with the champion granted a single request that Imperial tradition obligated the Emperor to fulfill. The night before her departure for the Imperial capital, Maya received an unexpected visitor in her now luxurious quarters. "Supreme Commander," she said with carefully measured surprise as Vox entered, flanked by 4 guards. "To what do I owe this honor?" The Vrexian dismissed the guards with a gesture, waiting until they had left before speaking. "You have created quite a problem for me, Chain Dancer, by entertaining your crowds, by bringing unprecedented viewership to your arenas. Those seem like solutions, not problems." Vox hissed, a sound Maya had learned indicated irritation. "You know exactly what you've done. No soft-body species has ever qualified for the grand tournament. The Emperor will not be pleased." "Then perhaps you should have killed me when you had the chance," Maya said evenly. "That option remains available." Vox's 4 hands moved to the ceremonial daggers at his belt. Accidents befall fighters all the time, even celebrated ones. Maya smiled, making no move toward the blade that now hung openly at her side. "You could try. But then you'd have to explain to your Emperor why his most anticipated tournament in decades is missing its star attraction. I imagine that conversation would be uncomfortable." For a long moment, they stared at each other in silence, the Vrexian's 4 eyes boring into Maya's 2. Finally, Vox's hands moved away from his weapons. "You will lose in the capital," he said. "I have arranged it. The opponents there will make Skarax look like a training exercise." "We'll see," Maya replied. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need my rest before tomorrow's journey." After Vox departed, Maya activated the small jammer Crix had built before his capture, one of the few pieces of contraband technology they'd managed to smuggle into the upper tiers. Once she was certain they couldn't be monitored, she pressed a hidden switch in her chains. The locks disengaged silently, allowing her to remove the restraints for the first time in months. She could have escaped them weeks ago, but the chains had become more than just restraints. They were part of her fighting style, her public identity, and most importantly, they maintained the Vrexian's false sense of control. She massaged her wrists briefly before re-engaging the locks. Tomorrow she would travel to the imperial capital with the other tournament qualifiers. And there, before the emperor and his entire court, the final phase of their plan would unfold. Not just a fight, not just an escape, a revolution that would shake the foundations of the Phyrexian Empire. The imperial arena made the provincial fighting pits look like children's playpens, carved from a hollowed-out mountain and outfitted with technology from across the galaxy. It could accommodate over 1 million spectators, with holographic projections extending the experience to billions more throughout the empire. Maya and the other 19 qualifiers were housed in a luxurious compound adjacent to the arena, still prisoners, but prisoners worthy of the emperor's attention. Each fighter was assigned an honor guard of 4 Phyrexian warriors, ostensibly for protection, but realistically for surveillance. The tournament structure was brutal in its simplicity. Single elimination matches until only the champion remained. The pairings were supposedly random, but Maya wasn't surprised to find herself matched against Terex in the very first round. "They fear you," Zell communicated telepathically during the night before the tournament began. The gelatinous entity had qualified by dominating the Psionic Combat Division and now served as their key communication hub. "Security has been doubled around the Imperial box." "Good," Maya responded in her thoughts, knowing Zell could receive them. "Fear makes them predictable. Is everyone in position?" "All teams are ready. The moment you give the signal, it begins." Maya smiled in the darkness of her quarters. "Then let's give them a show they'll never forget." The following morning, as Maya was led toward the arena for her match against Terex, a commotion erupted in the fighters' preparation area. A small, familiar figure was being dragged by guards, beaten, diminished, but somehow still alive. "Crix," Maya whispered, genuine shock replacing her carefully maintained composure. The tiny engineer looked up at the sound of her voice, his compound eyes dimmed but recognizable. "Chain dancer," he managed weakly. "They brought me to watch you fall." Before Maya could respond, Supreme Commander Vox appeared, his ceremonial armor gleaming. "A reunion before the end," he said with cruel satisfaction. "How touching. Your little accomplice proved remarkably resilient. But in the end, all break before Phyrexian interrogation." Maya's eyes narrowed. "What did he tell you?" "Enough to ensure that after Terex kills you, we will locate and eliminate every one of your co-conspirators." Vox leaned closer. "Did you really think we wouldn't discover your pathetic rebellion?" For the first time since her capture, Maya laughed. A genuine, full-throated sound that echoed through the preparation chamber. The Phyrexian guards shifted uncomfortably at the unexpected reaction. "What amuses you at the moment of your defeat?" Vox demanded. Maya's laughter subsided to a smile. "The fact that after all this time, you still underestimate me." She looked at Crix, a silent message passing between them. "You think this ends in the arena today. You have no idea what's coming." Before Vox could respond, the imperial trumpets sounded, signaling the tournament's commencement. The guards resumed their escort, leading Maya toward the tunnel that would take her into the imperial arena. As she walked, chains clinking with each step, Maya's mind was already 3 moves ahead. Vox thought he knew their plan. A coordinated uprising among the fighters, perhaps with some stolen weapons or improvised explosives. A desperate gambit by desperate captives. He had no idea that the arena itself was about to become their weapon. The light at the end of the tunnel grew brighter. The roar of 1,000,000 Phyrexians and their subjugated species filled Maya's ears. Ahead waited Terex, the Empire's ultimate champion, engineered specifically to kill. But Maya Reyes had not survived 15 arena matches, had not united dozens of enslaved species, had not endured months in chains, to fail now. They had bound her for battle, thinking the chains would weaken her. Instead, they had forged her into something stronger than they could imagine. The revolution was about to begin.